Hello. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining once again to TechEDTV, bringing you the latest and the greatest in startups, technology, and information technologies, and everything you want to learn on tech. Today is your lucky day because we have a super interesting person, a friend, a football player, and an entrepreneur. So we have today Ray Leavitt. How are you, Ray?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Edwin.
Great. Like usually you don't find a lot of football players or basketball players being entrepreneurs. Tell me your journey. When did you begin? What was it? Where did you play?
I played football at FAU. That's what got me down to South Florida. I'm originally from Jacksonville, so growing up, I'd come down to South Florida pretty often to visit my grandma, and I loved it down here. So when I had the opportunity to play football for Coach Stellenberger, I came down to FAU.
And did you score any big points when you were?
Actually, unfortunately, right when I became the starter, I had gotten hit by a drunk driver, and that knocked me out of football. So but that one door closed, another door opened. I was in a bit of denial though because I had dreams and aspirations of going to the NFL as a kicker.
Wow! That's fantastic. But then that turned out right because you became a better not a better person, but an entrepreneur, right? Maybe.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. You think your life is over and the world has ended, and I got an opportunity to go work for a bank in Singapore, and that really opened my eyes to the global business environment and all the opportunities that existed.
And but your background is in marketing and business, is that right?
Yeah, so I was studying international business, marketing, and small business entrepreneurship, small business management at FAU.
And I remember we met in 2011, maybe 2012, maybe.
Yeah, it might have been around that time. When I was coming up with EVOLUX was actually when I was on that trip to Singapore.
Okay.
I had a fascination with private aviation, living in Boca. You get the expensive cars, right, you get the jets taking off. Actually, when we were in football practice at 5:30 in the morning, Gulfstreams are taking off, blowing exhaust in our
That's so awesome.
face. Yeah, it was cool, but at the same time, you couldn't breathe from the jet fuel exhaust. But no, it was. It was very motivating being down here, and that love for private aviation, just being around it, made me really explore it. And sitting in the traffic of South Florida, I really started to grow an obsession with vertical takeoff and landing roadable aircraft, which now people call eVTOL.
Right.
But flying cars have been the dream of many, and I wanted to try to make that a reality. So I really started to study private aviation and saw that the helicopter was actually the predecessor to that flying car, but the helicopter industry had a lot of market dynamics that really was inhibiting its growth and really needed some help to grow towards that future that we're now seeing come to fruition.
Perfect. And tell me one more thing, Ray. What do you see yourself and EVOLUX in the future with the drones? I saw in the Consumer Electronics Show, we're showing right now one of those drones we saw in the Consumer Electronics shows.
Sure.
And there were many drones that were carrying people. It was no longer just to carry a camera and take some picture, but
Sure.
It's taking humans just like a helicopter. Tell me where your position will be for EVOLUX there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started building this business, we were really modeling after Richard Branson, after Falcon 1, or Burt Rutan, who put an aircraft in place for the Ansari X Prize to take man to space and come back with a reusable vehicle. I wanted to do the same thing with the flying cars that were on their way. I was like, man, let's get a fleet of those and start creating a flying car transport system. So that was always kind of the vision in the future, was to build towards that.
Tell me, where do you see yourself and your vision for EVOLUX now and into the future with those modes of transportation, vertical transportation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the very first business plan for EVOLUX actually had a flying car on the cover of the business plan. That was when I was in university, and at that time people thought I was crazy, flying cars, that doesn't exist. And I'm like, I'm telling you, these vertical lift technology is on its way, and computer technology with stabilization systems and unmanned air vehicles and things like that are on their way. Well, now they're here. There's a big challenge. I think we think it's right around the corner, but there's a lot of safety and history that goes into constantly iterating vertical lift aircraft. And so these helicopters that you're seeing today, a lot of the aircraft in the market, they've been around for a long time, but because they have the safety history and record, so the FAA is not going to just open up the doors to let these into the airspace right away. It's going to take rigorous testing before it ever gets to a point where it can transport a man. However, there are other countries that have really been very lenient in this, as you see in China and Dubai, that are allowing these type of technologies. So we're very aware of it and we're very interested in it, but we still think there's a big gap to taking, I would say the technologies of helicopters that are flown by pilots to getting to that future. But I think it's going to be very similar to autopilot with a pilot in place for a very long time before you see us just jumping in a vehicle without a pilot.
Not yet. Will be like the Jetsons then. It'll be a while, maybe a decade, 2 decades. Or something.
Right. Companies like Uber, Elevate, they're promising it like it's tomorrow, and that's probably to build up investor interest. But the reality is that you're going to need pilots that want to live to get that thing safely on the ground in case of an emergency.
But right now, EVOLUX, where was that venture from EVOLUX when you began in like helping in startups? That's how I met you when you were in the EDC, in Enterprise Developer Corporation. Mm-hmm. And how do you segue from helping in startups to like, okay, I have my idea, let me build it, and end up at the incubator for the Sikorski Incubator?
Sure. So when I came back from Singapore and I was building the business plans for EVOLUX, there was really no business plan competition at FAU. And I took the product and service innovation courses and the business planning courses, and that's where we came up with the concept for the business. I was also a private jet broker at that time, and doing that side of the business. But when I had put the business together and met Scott Ellington, who ran what's called FARDA, Florida Atlantic Research Development Authority, and Jane Teague, who ran the Enterprise Development Corporation of South Florida, they offered me a free workspace in that technology business incubator for a couple years to get EVOLUX started and off the ground. So they gave me mentorship and a lot of things like that. And while I was there, I started doing side projects for them. I had hosted a workshop. So that drunk driver that hit me and knocked me out of football, I ended up getting that settlement. It was a very small amount, but I got a settlement, and I used that to hold a workshop where I brought down researchers from Georgia Tech Research Institute, Florida Atlantic University's College of Engineering and Computer Science, Florida Tech, Boeing Phantom Works, Petroleum Helicopter. And what we were doing was all of those parties participated in the movement of personnel and cargo around Atlanta during the 96 Olympic Games, but it was all done with phones and whiteboards. Right. And we were trying to understand that system for how they were using helicopters to get products and goods and people around. And we wanted to take that understanding, and that system actually was submitted to the Vertical Flight Subcommittee of the FAA. It was done by them, and it was called TARTNAS, Project TARTNAS, which was the tilt rotor and advanced rotorcraft in the National Airspace System. So it was trying to understand that flying car VTOL that you're talking about,
right.
how this can exist in the airspace that's really not digitized yet.
So basically, EVOLUX is the solution for scheduling, pickup, and landing in vertical helicopters or vertical vehicles. That's what EVOLUX primarily is, right?
Sure. So out of that consortium that I put together, a 3-day workshop, what we came up with was the next generation non-interfering vertiport operating system. We called it NG-NEVOS. And that was the beginning, and what was the first project that we could do to build that grand vision of helicopters coming and interfacing with the multimodal infrastructure that exists with planes and trains and all of that. So out of that system, we said we need to build software around this, but we had a hard time winning grants. And so we put together a small friends and family round and built the very first booking system for helicopters. That was like our first step.
Okay.
And so we took the 17 helicopters that were here in South Florida and we created a booking system. It was very, it was very simplistic of an app, but we got an app built. And with that app, I went and started sponsoring golf tournaments. And so we did the Allianz Championship here in Boca Raton. And from that, we landed a helicopter after the last putt dropped on the 18th hole for a Grapes on the Green wine event benefiting the Boca Raton Community Hospital.
Wow.
And so the money that was raised for that and the noise that was created, like, oh, it's the freaking Catalina wine mixer, like from Step Brothers. Everybody had a good time with that.
Okay.
And what that did is it got some buzz created around the system we had built. And next thing you know, we're flying NASCAR drivers and pro golfers by helicopter to get from the racetracks to their yachts and to get around South Florida and jump over the traffic.
That was like the initial, they will say like version 1.0 of EVOLUX.
Yeah, that was our prototype.
And then you segued into Sikorski now. Like, what? How do you get into Sikorski? It sounds like a very prestigious incubator.
Yeah. So to answer your previous question, though, I was incubating EVOLUX and building that prototype while I was offered that program management position with the EDC, the Enterprise Development Corporation Technology Business Incubator. So I was there to help cultivate the startup ecosystem. So we had those 6 years that I was there, we did biotech conferences with all the major universities in the state. So we did like stem cell research and all kinds of really cool technology that was emerging. And then we also did the Technology Business Showcase, which you actually presented.
Right.
And so I was helping coach the entrepreneurs with that, and I would do a lot of the grading of the business plans and the deal flow support for the New World Angels, and it really held Boca Bootstrapper tech meetups.
We did start the weekend.
We did a startup weekend together. We things to cultivate and be a catalyst in Boca for the tech startup scene. And I think we had a pretty good run, but it actually evolved for what you have here.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I think there was kind of like the segue from where we had initially that I was a learner and I can be, in a way, I can become a master without knowing that it was. But the challenge happened, and unfortunately things are working out. But tell me more about you.
But that's what happened was so I had submitted my business plan.
Yes, you submitted business plan. Sikorski, okay.
So Sikorski had this global entrepreneurial challenge.
Right.
And since I was so focused on vertical lift,
perfect match.
I was trying to find. I said, hey, these operators, they have no money. They're liquidating their fleet. This was also during an economic crash.
Was the 2010 crash?
2008, 9, 10. It was around that time period. And Deja had actually moved into the research park, who was founded by Ed Yakubuchi, who founded Citrix.
Right. So what happened to them?
Well, so they were trying to be the operator and the aggregator and the technology. They tried to be too many things at once and grow too fast, which is what they were used to, and they had the funding. I mean, he raised $87 million.
Wow.
But the problem is he invested in the Eclipse 500, and he had the delivery position for that, which the avionics were a new avionics system with Microsoft, and it failed, and the delivery of the aircraft didn't get brought in time, and it was crashing. They had raised membership, and it just was a big problem. So they had a lot of promise, and they showed how you could aggregate people on flights by the seat, and it could be comparable, if not cheaper, than flying commercial. And they were focusing on routes that the airlines were not really focused on. They were kind of under-servicing routes like here to Gainesville, here to Jacksonville, here to Orlando, those type of short flights, because the airlines, they have to fill these huge airplanes, and they need enough demand to do those routes.
Yeah, they will never go from here to Gainesville. They will never go from here to Jacksonville.
Right, and you might have a small regional that'll do it, and it's just not as frequent as people would like it, right? So
right.
The 1 to 7 hour drive time is a wide open space that needs to be focused on. And at that time, I was still very focused on helicopters because I believe in the vertical lift.
Right.
So anyways, I put our business plan, it was like a Hail Mary to Sikorski, because I figured who has the most to benefit other than the operators, the manufacturers.
Right.
The manufacturers are always, they've grown their businesses on government contracts to build military aircraft.
Right.
The commercial space, they don't really care. They have a few billionaires that want to own helicopters. Great, we'll build an executive aircraft. But I was trying to show them how we could grow the executive market, in the charter market, And now they have a much bigger market to go after with that fleet of aircraft.
And tell me now, where is EVOLUX? So we understand where you're coming from a football player to an entrepreneur, program manager for the EDC, creating entrepreneurship ecosystem in South Florida.
Yep.
Now you're at Sikorski, and what happened after that?
Yeah, so they were like, hey, you're in the top 3. I was going up against a company out of Australia, San Francisco, Germany, and these companies were way further ahead than what we had.
Right.
And when they said, hey, Ray, you're our winner, and I was like, wait, what? They required me to move up to Connecticut.
I know, you moved, yeah.
And when I moved, that was like saying goodbye to the tech ecosystem and everything, and you kind of took the reins from there. But when I was up there, they wanted to put me through this year-long incubator process, which really was me being put in this big, beautiful office and, videos of me. And it was a lot of PR to kind of show the innovation that they were doing. But it really wasn't the level of support we were hoping for. And they actually ended up getting acquired by Lockheed Martin halfway through us being up there. So we didn't even get the funding we were supposed to get. And I burned through my savings and really took that entrepreneurial leap and had a hard landing. But what it forced me to do is go out and pitch angel groups around New York City, bring a team together, and we were able to get a small amount of money, about $200,000 to take that prototype system and build a more beta system.
And that's something that you actually I saw some on some of your posting where you were having actual customers, you had a lot of customers, you reached certain amount of sales. I think you actually had everything working.
Yeah, so we actually, through a partnership with BMW iVentures, who is looking at us as an investment portfolio company, they had connected us with Rolls-Royce Motor Cars, who was launching a power perfection driving event.
Right.
And their customers, they already have everything. So what can you offer them that they don't already have? So they wanted to get their prospective clients and their existing clients in a car on a track to show them the new sporty Wraith or the Ghost or the Phantom or the Dawn that was coming out.
Right.
How do we do that when no one wants to drive 2 hours to get to a track and then drive for 4 hours and drive 2 hours back? They don't have that whole day to just waste on that.
Right.
So when they saw what we had with the booking system for helicopters, it was a perfect match to create fly and drive track events. So we did successfully 5 fly and drive track events all across the country in LA, Palm Beach, Miami, up in New York. And from that, we learned our business model of event-based travel with helicopters. You could do like 6 to 18 helicopter flights a day instead of one-off charters being booked through the system. So it was a really cool way for us to learn our business model using our technology platform.
And now that you're having this comeback to South Florida, because obviously you're back, tell us more about you're revamping your management team, you're revamping your platform, you're working on new things. Tell our audience what's going on.
Yeah, so I mean, there's been a lot that's happened between the Rolls-Royce days and this. We expanded our platform to being not just helicopters. We brought on prop planes because a lot of times the economics of a helicopter doesn't make sense, or you don't necessarily need to land vertically somewhere.
Right.
So the natural evolution of this was adding prop planes, amphibious aircraft, light jets up to heavy jets, and what we had created in our technology wasn't just a booking system, but we had invented an FAA compliant way to allow people to crowdsource flights, private charters. So they become one customer. That one customer's already been quoted. They know what their price is, and then they go to that operator as one customer to then
it's like
the flight.
In a very simplified way. It's like an Uber X or Uber to Uber X type of for planes in a very simplified way, right?
Right, Uber pool,
right?
But Uber didn't really exist when we first
started
the business.
Of course. And this is different regulatory compliance problems here because you're dealing with the FAA. I don't think is that easy. But in terms of that management team, there is anyone that you have recruited? Any more people?
Yeah. So actually, the team has evolved. It's gone through its cycle. We actually had a really bad year in 2019. We had one of our partners in Chicago who passed away. We became the reservation system for Vertiport Chicago, which is a heliport in downtown Chicago.
Wow.
And that partnership was great, but we had a lot of turbulence with that. And then one of our best pilots, he had passed away. So 2019 was a tough year. We lost some revenues and things like that. So I had, when things are kind of down and out, you're trying to figure out a way to reconfigure. This year, with COVID, we had a lot of flights it's normally our Bahamas season, flying people to the Bahamas.
Right.
That got cut. So we lost all of those revenues. Right. And so through all this, though, we kind of emerged with a new management team. I had reconnected with Matthew Hudson.
Right. Which we knew.
Who was one of our incubator tenants.
Right.
That I brought in from FAU.
We're going to bring Hudson. Matthew, you're watching. You're next.
Yeah. So
don't hide.
Matt's got a lot of great energy, and he was kind of that partner that I had always needed and never really had, like somebody that's on my same level with really able to discuss complex
I think you guys
things.
both connect very well. I see you guys in communication very, very well. When you're in a conference call, you guys have this natural chemistry, which is key for entrepreneurs. And I want to segue into a little bit of your experience as an entrepreneur. Obviously, you have quite a ride. What do you recommend to those entrepreneurs right now that are facing challenge? They're facing because in your case, you face one challenge, an accident. You are past that. You're not in my accident, whatever. You're fine. I never heard you even complain about that ever. And I've known him for quite a while. You have a daughter, actually, right? So it's not a challenge; it's a blessing, but at the same time, it's a big responsibility.
It's a driver for sure.
And you even have a dog and a girlfriend, right? So you have a full life.
Yep.
It's not that you're just working for EVOLUX 24/7, or you married EVOLUX and your kids are helicopters. So it's like you have real human beings and a family.
Yep.
Tell our entrepreneurs out there that they're watching you today, like something to motivate them to continue and not be a weak.
Well, it's funny because there's for the first time ever, I felt like, man, am I supposed to just quit? And there's been a lot of times.
Everybody who has that thought. Don't.
But it took a long time for me to get to that point because I had multiple times where I could just shrug off the stresses and just plowed forward. And the more irons I put in the fire, something would hit and pull you out of that dip. And actually, there's an entrepreneur here in South Florida who's recently succeeded pretty well with his exit, John Duffy from 3CI Interactive.
Right. John Duffy, right.
Yeah, he gave a speech at FAU once, or I think it was FAU, where he was talking about entrepreneurship is a repetitive roller coaster ride where your job is to avoid near-death experiences constantly.
And I can testify to that.
Yeah. Like there's times where you're down and out, and then something pulls you. Something pulls you out of it, right?
So it's like a football game, right? Like you're down maybe 2 touchdowns, but you're like, even if you're
always a chance
2 minutes away, you always give it a shot. Like you did, like you throw a Hail Mary for Sikorski, and you score.
Yeah,
basically.
And I just scored one.
And you score on one, basically. Yeah. So now you're facing you're restructuring your team.
Yep.
And then what would you be the advice to entrepreneurs that are looking for starting something and they don't feel that they can do it? What would you tell them right now in terms of advice?
Honestly, some of my biggest advice that I cannot wait to share with the world and entrepreneurships or entrepreneurs is, I went for that grand slam home run right out the gates, and I'm glad I did. I mean, you reach for the stars, you land, or you reach for the stars, you land amongst the moon, something like that.
Right.
So my biggest thing is, I think in business school they teach you build business plans and then go raise money, right? That's not ever really the plan. The plan should be do something that generates revenue, save that money, and recycle it into the next thing that's going to generate revenue. So, and keep growing it. So, if it's a little air machine that puts air in your tires at the gas station,
right?
Fund it, get that thing going, get the money out of that, then take that money and put it into your next thing, and keep doing that. Barter your way up with a small cash cow business rather than trying to go straight for it and hope that investors are going to put money into it.
That's actually one of the things that we teach here at the incubator, and I'm very big supporter of that because I came from the school where we were spent literally month dealing with potential investors and slide decks and presentations, people fighting for I own this, I own that.
Yeah.
And they had like a minor prototype and maybe a few sales or just a simple proof of concept. And usually that was a recipe for disaster. Mm-hmm. And Ray has come to the same conclusion that we have. And then, I mean, we didn't get into any agreement to say that, right? That's like something that is spontaneous, right? It's a reality.
It's something you learn as you go through it, but it sucks that you have to learn it the hard way, right?
Yeah, you have to learn it the hard way. You have to lose money. You have to get in debt. You have to. And I think like that's one of the things I see is that people that are hungry for money, they're hungry to be successful, and they're like willing to have the stamina, just like a football player, right? Just being a football player is having a little stamina. Then they are the entrepreneurs that will survive. The rest is just, I think they may just look for a job because it's
never. Well, you can always look for a job, but keep your business going. I used to always say, hey, keep your day job until that startup or that company is able to pay 4 times what that company.
Right.
But the reality is you can't do that because you have to be full time on your startup. Like, eat, sleep, drink. But in this case, I think you do a very well time management as well because, like I said, you're juggling family, you're juggling EVOLUX, you're juggling your other startups that you help as well. I've heard for something that you're working on as well. But what would be your best? Let's say what would be the next 5 years for you for EVOLUX? Now that let's say like everything start lining up and the starts are coming back to. So the exciting thing about bringing in the new management team with Matt and Matt's father actually has gotten involved, and he's a captain for Falcon 9000s and large heavy jets. Mm-hmm. He brings an element to the company, which something when you have a weakness, you got to try to find a strength that complements that. And we found a very interesting business model that is very unique to other players in our space. Which I don't know how much I want to get into it right now.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. Like I think maybe like just keep it for yourself. But but in essence, you're structuring and you're shooting again to relaunch EVOLUX to get new markets and survive this COVID-19 unfortunate pandemic that we're suffering.
Unfortunate, but believe it or not, it's actually helped our industry tremendously. So as much as it hurt us losing all the flights during those months, private aviation's actually up 212% this year from last year. And the reason for that is there's the obvious reasons of people don't want to go to the airport and get caught on that. It's a very expensive mode of transport, right? So not many people can actually afford it. But the airlines already had underserviced certain routes. So you want to go to Austin, Texas, right?
Terrible.
It's a really tough route because if you've only got one flight one day that goes that route, you got to do all these connecting flights. What happens with one of your connecting flights gets canceled?
Yeah, no,
it's getting around the country right now is tough, and
it's terrible.
They scaled down really quickly, but their scale up is going to be really slow. So the unique aspect of SkyShare, what that actually brings to the market is we can actually, in certain cases, make private aviation the same price as commercial aviation if you get the people to self-aggregate on routes and things like that. So we have a product called SkyShare Groups, where you can create a group that's route-based and invite people to it. So if you know a lot of people that weekly would go to Tallahassee during certain periods of the year, you would create a route on there, football games or legislative sessions or whatever it is that you want to go to Tallahassee. Because right now, if you want to go to Tallahassee, you got to fly to Atlanta or Charlotte, do a connecting flight.
Just better drive.
Right, which would take 7.5, 8 hours.
Right, but you probably spend the same amount of time at the airport waiting and just switching planes or whatever.
Right, but with our system, if you planned ahead and you got other people that wanted to go on the same date and same time by one of our SkyShare groups, you'd be spending $800 to $1,000 a seat round trip on a private jet.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. Here is a very super interesting. I'm putting a video right now with Ray flying one of his helicopters. I think it's one of the Sikorski ones that he mentioned before. And say bye to our audience, Ray, and thanks for coming. Thanks for watching TechEDTV.
Yep, thank you so much, Edwin.
Platform enables regional travelers to plan ahead and reserve FAA commercially certified air carriers to take them